Good day, students. This is Professor Inglet. I am going to talk about Chapter 2, World Religions. Chapter 2 is Indigenous Religions. Let me share my desktop. Let's see if it's sharing. Okay. Sorry about that. So Chapter 2 is called Indigenous Religions. The term Indigenous religion, there's no good term for Native Americans, Indians, Aborigines, tribal systems, native traditions, oral traditions, basic traditions. There isn't a good word. Indigenous religion is perhaps the best word that causes the least amount of trouble and worries for scholars. Due to colonialism, basically, every indigenous religion has faced with colonialism to a certain degree. And we do have to remember that in terms of the dominant religions of the country versus the indigenous religions of the country. Sometimes the indigenous religions disappear and are disappearing, and therefore we should definitely study them. What are some features of the indigenous religion? Number one really is this difference between a sacred text versus the oral tradition. Indigenous religions tend to focus on the oral tradition instead of the written word. I come from a Cherokee Indian background, and just looking at the Cherokee Indian Sequoyah, he produced the Cherokee alphabet in the 19th century. So that's only just a couple of hundred years away, that he produced the alphabet. So the native tradition of Cherokee was an oral tradition before that. And sometimes the only way for a religion to survive is to write down the language, study the language. What does the oral tradition provide? I think it provides interesting things. If you look at the PowerPoint here, I say less permanent artifacts. There are other ways to look at the culture. You can look at dance. You can look at the masks and costumes and even paintings within the culture, sometimes sand paintings, other types of paintings as well. And you can have 21st century modern or contemporary artists depicting their religion through different ways other than the written word. So here we have some masks. I'm not remembering which tradition that is, but we do have some masks here representative of a play, of performance, of a ceremony that exists within that particular tradition. Another major feature in indigenous religions would be nature is the expression of the sacred. When we talk about nature, again, we're talking about this deep connection to the sacred element of the community through the natural environment. So we're talking about plants, we're talking about an animistic connection. Remember animism from chapter 1. So animism is very, very much alive within these traditions. Birds, animals, human beings, the connection of water, the sun, the moon, the clouds, the wind, the mountains, the rocks, the soil. There seems to be no clear boundaries between the natural and the supernatural world, between that vision of the supernatural world. Black elk, an Oglala Sioux Indian, said birds make their nests in circles, for theirs is the same religion as ours. So the sacred space of the bird making his nest in a circle. So you see the circle as an element of indigenous religions of many different cultures. Other animistic artifacts would be sacred spaces. I think we could talk about nature as sacred space. We can talk about mountains as a sacred space. Think about the mountains that you've been on and what they mean. Volcanoes, particularly in Hawaii. The Hawaiian religion very much is influenced by the volcanoes. Valleys, lakes, forests, other natural sites, even Stonehenge in England is circular, and it represents a particular point of view, a particular theme. And you'd have to research Stonehenge and find that out for yourself. So, major features: oral tradition, nature is sacred, animistic elements, this relationship between nature and things that are alive in nature, such as spirits, that spirits inhabit this connection to nature. And with spirits, we can also say ancestors. Ancestors are important. And then obviously some artifacts that relate to some of these things would be a way to express these things would be dance, masks, costumes, paintings, pottery. Pottery's on there too. Some other features, I like this little picture here because it shows a modern interpretation of the tradition, the native tradition here. Songs and chanting is very important. And you can go online and listen to some chanting and songs of many different Native American or indigenous populations. It's also a mythology, an origin story that goes along with all the religions. How did we get here? You see that in the Christian or Hebrew Jewish Bible. How did we get here? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So there's a narrative there as well. One narrative that I like is in an African mythology. The high God creates the earth, and then he decides he doesn't like it. So he abandons the creation. He walks away. That's kind of an interesting narrative story. All indigenous religions tend, I say all that I've looked at, they tend to have some kind of mythological discussion as well, just like the world religions do as well. I mentioned ancestor worship earlier. There's this homage or praise to the ancestors that's important. So after a particular ancestor dies, if they are an important ancestor, they continue living in the minds and souls and hearts of the community. This is not something that is practiced in Western Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, the Western traditions, but ancestor worship is looked at quite often in the Eastern traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, very much so, and some other traditions of Buddhism focus on ancestor worship. Taoism also. The Chinese focus a lot, the Chinese religions focus a lot on ancestor worship. There's rites of passage ceremonies that can be interesting, such as being born, getting circumcised, having the first menstruation cycle, getting married, and then obviously a rites of passage would be death too. You can analyze the indigenous religions from a point of view of rites of passage, and you can look at very particular communities and how they deal with or confront the rites of passage ceremonies. Here we have 3 senior women dressed in gay sun dancer costumes from the Native American Tlingit tribe. Tlingit almost sounds like Inglet, my last name. And notice the fish, the prominence of the fish within this particular Pacific Northwest tradition. Let's look at the Pueblo population. We could look at any tradition. We could look at Cherokee. We could look at Choctaw. We could look at Shawnee. You can look at your own traditions if you have some background in the indigenous populations. Pueblo means village, and here you have a representation of the house. The house is a Pueblo. It's a 2-story house. It has windows, it has doors, it has ladders. It's very much an interesting style, if you will, in architecture. Typically, I think the Native American traditions get stereotyped. Oh, they live in teepees. Well, some do, some don't. Cherokees did not live in teepees. Pueblos did not live in teepees either. So we have a different view, and they've developed the concept of the brick within this tradition. Therefore, why not build the house? um, so this is more of a tradition that wasn't nomadic. Once you build the house, you stay in that area. Pueblos are an indigenous population in southwestern United States, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. There are many different types of Pueblo Indians, very many different communities within the Pueblo community. So they lived in multi-story homes, differing from teepees and other home units. You might ask, well, what does this mean? How does this represent their way of life? So you ask those questions. Pueblo mythology. Here we have the spider woman on the side, the grandmother. She is a major figure within the Pueblo tradition. Their early mythology is that they once lived underground and they climbed through a hole to reach the earth. So there's this underground element in the Pueblo tradition of moving from underground to above ground as a way to survive and as a way to live. This story is similar to many of the Native American traditions in the southwestern region. I've read some other stories about Native Americans coming from the dirt, the underground, and moving in to above the ground. It's quite different from the Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition. You can look at that yourself and analyze the differences. Pueblos are monotheistic and polytheistic. Can you be too? Yes. They believe in a concept of the Great Spirit. I've used the word Great Spirit before around people, and again, there are stereotypes of indigenous populations. Sometimes that's not the right word. But for the Pueblo mythology, it is the correct word, Great Spirit. The Hopi they are a Pueblo community. They believed in 30 gods, or about 30 gods. The sun god is Tawa. The moon god is Muya. So imagine waking up in the morning and giving praise to Tawa, the sun god, and imagine going to bed at night giving praise to Muya. Then the sky god, Sotongnangu. I don't speak this language, so do be aware that could be the wrong pronunciation. The sky god. So if you wanted to pray for rain, you pray for rain to the sky god, Sotongnangu. And there's the spider woman, this grandmother figure that is very much a part of the Pueblo tradition, Kokyong Huti. So imagine this as kind of a term of endearment, the grandmother, the ancestor who connects to each individual person. And you ask her, the grandmother, for advice and life advice. There's something called the Kachinas. They're supernatural beings. This is the animistic element, signifying an ancestor or some natural element like the sky, wind, or corn or crop. So it's a bit polytheistic. It's a bit animistic as well. And you have Kachina dolls, which is on this slide, the Pueblo Kachina ceremonies. So people would make the dolls, and this would be a representative of that supernatural spirit that connects each person to the divine and sacred. And you have Kachina ceremonies as well, with lots and lots of dancers portraying the Kachina element within this particular Pueblo community. So once again, we have an animistic concept of the Kachina. There's also something called Kokopelli. It's kind of stereotyped and popularized in jewelry, for instance. Kokopelli is also a concept of of the Kachina concept within the Pueblo tradition. Each individual, typically male, sometimes female, would go on a vision quest. It depends on the culture. A vision quest. So here we have a picture of an indigenous person who is going out into nature, who will set like on a mountain or some kind of location and go into a life and have a vision, have some kind of vision. So the practice was highly variable, but in general, seekers would travel to a secluded place, such as a hilltop or mountain, and remain there for as many as 4 days, typically without food and sometimes maybe without water as well. Seekers frequently endured hunger, thirst, and a variety of harsh environmental conditions until rewarded with a vision. So at some point after 4 days, you're going to have some kind of vision that is very powerful and gives you a path to the rest of your life. There's a Australian movie called The Walkabout, and it's about an Aborigine Indigenous person who goes out and has this vision quest as well. I highly recommend that movie if you want to watch it. It's the vision quest from an Australian native's point of view. Certainly beyond the vision quest, we have what are called taboos, and every religion contains taboos. It's the no-nos of the religion. But let's define it positively. Ways of protecting the individual and safeguarding the natural order of things. So a taboo can be viewed from an optimistic standpoint. One taboo is the menarche, menstruation. Many religions ask the women to separate from the population during menstruation. This is even in the Jewish tradition as well. In the Bible, women were separated during menstruation. The idea from that perspective is that once they return, they were to be fruitful and multiply. So there's a positive element to the Jewish tradition. It says here, others like the Apache view menstruation as a strength and sign of overpowering illness within the community. So menstruation, even in the pagan tradition, the Wiccan tradition, menstruation is very powerful. It's viewed very powerful. In traditional Hawaiian culture, the shadow of a commoner cannot fall on a member of the nobility. So you have a hierarchy within the Hawaiian indigenous religious concepts. There is a connection between the health of the land and the health of the noble within many African groups. That dates back to Confucianism as well. If the land is sick, then there's maybe something wrong with the king. So those are some taboos. You might want to think about some taboos that exist in your own life or that have changed in the past 25 to 30 years. There are quite a few taboos out there. And what taboos have caught your attention? And are they positive taboos? Are these positive taboos? And should they be eliminated? Should they be changed? Should they still be followed? Typically, if a taboo is broken, sometimes the individual or group may perform a ritual, such as a libation. That's where you feed the ground. You atone with liquid. You pour liquid on the ground as an atonement. You do this to a spirit or god or goddess. So if you've done something wrong to the land, then you perform a libation. I would say the more popular ones that are done are animal sacrifices. We don't necessarily like to talk about this, but yes, there are animal sacrifices within many traditions. Sometimes these animal sacrifices within Hinduism, for instance, they turn into vegetarian sacrifices. So it's a movement away from meat and you do plant sacrifices. One thing about an animal sacrifice is the community still participates and performs and eats the feast. There are rare, I would say rare occasions of human sacrifice that occur. And in our textbook, it goes through some human sacrifices in the Aztec population and in the New Guinea population. Another important element of shamanism, of indigenous religion, is shamanism. This is the practice of interacting with the human and spiritual world. And here's a picture of Shaman Ye Churik from the Ethnic and Cultural Center Toster, which is near Mongolia. So she's possibly Mongolian in tradition, and also an ethnic Ye Churik from the Ethnic and Cultural Center Toster. There we go. The shaman may go into a dream or trance state to receive a vision. The shaman can also interpret the language of animals, charm them, and draw on their powers. And there's a steady use of drumming and intoxicating substances may occur, like peyote, which we talk about in our class as we watch some videos. So drumming and intoxicating substances may occur, and sleep and trance states do occur as well. And there's a sense that the shaman tradition is very much like the concept of the quote unquote medicine man or medicine woman. The shaman tradition is very powerful and very much a part of many of these traditions across the globe. And it's hard to say that one tradition is does one thing and another one doesn't. It's hard to put them all together, but shamans exist in pretty much all areas of indigenous religion populations. There's always a threat to indigenous religions, as we discussed in the early discussion. One threat, of course, is world religions. People are converting to the world religions and leaving behind their past traditions. A lot of them combine their past traditions with the world religion. So we have a syncretic element that happens when the Spanish colonized South America, and where the Spanish and French and British, German all colonize the United States. There's a conversion towards world religions. If you're Cherokee these days, you probably call yourself a Christian to a certain degree. And there's also a disappearance of the languages and the speaker. I keep mentioning Cherokee. I have a Cherokee Phoenix newspaper right in front of me. It's written in English, but I could go online and look at it in the Cherokee language, but I don't know the Cherokee language. So already there's a disappearance of the languages and speakers according to the particular tradition. I think eco-friendly concepts like climate change cause problems too. People move away from the land. They no longer can sustain themselves from the land, so they move to a different area. But then obviously pop culture dominates, the cell phone dominates. So everything within pop culture will change the tradition as well. That's a little bit about indigenous religions. There is more to learn, and there are many, many examples within the textbook. I only covered like Pueblo and some African traditions and some Native American traditions, such as the Hopi and Cherokee. But it's up to you to go to the textbook and to go into the world environment and read more about the stories of the various indigenous religions that exist, and learn from them from a humanistic standpoint. Learn from them, and you will be happy and blessed by their traditions. Thanks. That's all I have today. We'll move to chapter 3 soon. Talk to you later.